I think it is clear to believe in the power of ideas.
Fresh thinking to the Manhattan Institute.
I'll ask our panel to take their places and to elaborate on some of the political and economic complications to which Peter alluded. We'll be guided by Stephen Hayward of the American Enterprise Institute, Steve is the F.K. Weyerhaeuser Fellow in Law and Economics at AEI. He's an adjunct lecturer on government at Georgetown, and he, I think, is somebody who is well known for his own deep interest in environmental and economic issues, and we're very pleased to have him guide our panel.
Thank you, Howard. I'm a bit under the weather from some bug that took my voice away completely yesterday, so I won't say very much today, which will be good news to a lot of people in Washington. Just a couple of very brief introductory remarks. It seems to me you can summarize Peter's idea in one sentence as saying that what he proposes to do for electricity, what we did for surface transportation with interstate highways back in the 1950s. And there may or may not be some usable analogies and comparisons from that experience. I think I'm with Peter in suggesting that, at least from my point of view, it's time to revive the federalism of the Federalist Party, right? Alexander Hamilton would know what to do about this problem, I think. And those who call themselves Federalists today are exactly the opposite of that, right? I have one other axiom of public policy in Washington, which is that the more simple and compelling an idea, the more difficult it is to achieve, for all kinds of perverse reasons that I suppose that's no more than a restatement of the central insight of public choice theory. It's really hard things we seem to charge at these days and get wrapped around the axle, but simple ideas seem to baffle us. And so here to dilate on this problem is a panel from diverse points of the compass in the energy area. And we will begin with Philip Moeller, who is a commissioner with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, serving in that body since 2006. Prior to that, he worked in the private sector for Alliant Energy Corporation and Calpine. And with that, Philip, you're on.
Thank you, and good morning. It's always a pleasure to talk about transmission. At least it's a pleasure to me and hopefully to you as well. I've been sworn in for a couple of years now, and essentially I've been working as a top priority to get more infrastructure, energy infrastructure, constructed in the nation, and the highest priority in that field is transmission. I'll get into that in a moment. To me, I see this essentially as a transportation issue. What we're doing is trying to transport electrons across various distances so that they essentially end up to the consumers who want to get them. And we've had, I would say, 3 different examples of this kind of massive challenge to the country in our history. The first, I would go back to the 1860s. And essentially, Abraham Lincoln had the challenge of congestion, a growing West, and people needing and services needing to go there. How was that going to be done? Essentially, it was done through a transcontinental railroad. That was not uncontroversial. You know, there were cost allocation issues, probably weren't too many siting issues involved then, but it was essentially a major transportation effort by our nation's leaders. They took leadership to make it happen. The second, the one we hear more commonly, is the reference to the Eisenhower interstate system of the 50s. And in my office, we've done a little studying of the history of that, and there was a lot of back and forth as to how the cost allocation would occur. It was not simply waving a wand and Congress passing a massive infrastructure bill. It was politically contentious, and it took leadership, but that essentially led us to transportation, a more efficient transportation system. And similarly, I haven't heard anyone use this analogy, essentially the space program that John F. Kennedy endorsed was also a transportation challenge of getting to a new realm. And there were certainly some cost allocation issues, but it was really more about general fund. There were not so much siting issues, but similarly, we were in in a national effort to transport human beings to another world, and it took massive leadership, and with the right amount of policy development, it occurred. We're facing that now with the transportation of electrons, because, as it's been stated, more transmission makes for a more efficient grid, which helps consumers in ways that are sometimes quantifiable and in many cases are not. We have a series of energy problems. I'll stick really with electricity now, that are really based on uncertainty going forward. What's the cost of carbon going to